There are places you can only find when you've lost something. Not on maps. Not through GPS or coordinates. These places arrive when you're hollow enough for them to pour into. And once they do, they don't just take you. They keep you. I didn't plan to come here. No one ever really does. You don't choose the lake. The lake chooses you. My sister died in early spring. Quietly, with no drama. A sleep that didn't end. No explanation, no illness, just a vacancy where her breath had been. Everyone said the same things. She's in a better place. She's with the trees now. She's at peace. But none of those words landed. None of them rooted. Because peace doesn't linger in unanswered questions. A week after the funeral, I started hearing her voice. Not in my head. Not in dreams. In the wind. Whispering my name from places the wind shouldn't have reached. Behind locked doors. Inside my shower drain. Through the speakers of my phone when it wasn't even on. And always the same sentence, broken up across space and time, come back to where the water doesn't move. I didn't remember the lake at first. But grief rearranges the walls of your mind, pulls out things you'd sealed away. I started dreaming about a cabin we used to visit as kids. A lake so still it looked painted on the world. No ripples. No fish. No birds above it. I remembered the cold, colder than it should have been, even in August. I remembered the dock, always damp, even in the heat. I remembered that none of us ever swam. And I remembered something else. My sister had gone missing there once. Just for an hour. Vanished into the trees. Came back different. Quiet. Watchful. She wouldn't talk about it. She never did. But after that summer, we never returned. Until now, the cabin was still there. I found the listing under a different name, with grainy photos that didn't show the water. Just the walls. The wood. Like the lake had refused to be captured. I booked it. Told no one. Packed light. No intentions, no rituals, no crosses, no salt. Just myself, and the need to find out why her voice hadn't left me alone since the dirt covered her coffin. When I arrived, the wind stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Like the whole world had paused to exhale. The trees didn't move. The leaves stayed frozen midsway. Even the birdsong cut short like a skipped tape. And then I heard it again. Her voice. From the tree line. You're almost here. The inside of the cabin hadn't changed. Dust now lived where memories once did. The curtains still floral, but colorless. The kitchen still humming with that low, old buzz electricity. I walked barefoot across the floorboards and felt the cold rise from below. Not from a crawl space. From underneath. Like the house itself was floating on something colder than stone. I opened the back door and stepped onto the deck. There it was, the lake. Unchanged. Unmoving. Waiting. You don't understand stillness until you've seen a body of water that doesn't respond to wind. There was no texture to it. No light shimmer. It was like black glass, stretching farther than it should have, farther than the map claimed it did. I stood there, not breathing, not blinking, until I heard her again. Come to the dock. I'll meet you halfway. But there was no dock. Just 3 rotting posts jutting up from the edge like teeth. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid, because I didn't want to miss it. Whatever it was. At 2:11 a.m., I heard the front door creak open. But I hadn't locked it, and I hadn't opened it. I stayed perfectly still. Footsteps. Wet ones. Soft. Deliberate. They walked the full length of the cabin. Paused at my door. Then, silence. I waited 30 minutes before standing. Opened the bedroom door. Slow. Every breath a hammer in my chest. Nothing. But the floors were wet. And on the table, in the center of the cabin, was a Polaroid of me, standing on the deck, from just an hour earlier. But in the photo, I wasn't alone. Something stood in the water behind me, tall, thin, pale. Watching. I thought of leaving. I packed. I even opened the car door. But then, I heard her laugh. My sister's laugh. Clear. Bright. The way it sounded when we used to play flashlight tag in the woods. It came from the lake. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't about haunting. This wasn't about horror. It was about invitation. She hadn't been calling for help. She'd been calling me home. The fire didn't flicker out, it collapsed. Like something stole the air from the center. 1 second, the flames danced like they always do, lifting shadows onto the tree trunks. The next, there was just smoke. No glow. No warmth. Just the crackling memory of heat vanishing too fast to be natural. That's when we heard the first voice. Not loud. Not threatening. Almost polite. Don't move. It came from the left side of the clearing, behind a curtain of pine. We didn't move, not because we listened, but because something ancient and ancestral in our blood recognized that voice. Not a human voice. A forest voice. A before language voice. The kind that speaks in teeth and marrow. We were four of us that night. Old friends. Tired souls. We hadn't seen each other since the world turned sideways, and this trip was supposed to be the thing that brought us back. Phones off. No reception. Just stories, laughter, whiskey, and the woods. But no one told us this place already had its own stories. And some stories don't like competition. The fire was gone, but the coals still glowed red like open wounds. I remember the way the wind stilled, how the trees stopped moving like they were holding their breath. And then the second voice came, from behind us this time. Same cadence, different tone. Do not turn around. And we didn't, because we understood something right then. It wasn't a threat. It was instruction. Like we were guests at a ceremony we hadn't meant to attend, and someone was trying to keep us from making a fatal social error. The night around us deepened, color draining from everything but the faint glint of dying embers. My breath felt wrong in my chest, like the air had weight now, like it had shape. Beside me, Jonah muttered a prayer under his breath. The moment he said, "Amen," the third voice answered, this one directly in front of us, closer, more curious. "We don't believe in your endings." That's when I knew. We weren't in a forest anymore. We were inside something. A story that hadn't finished being told. You see, some places aren't haunted. They're hungry. Not for flesh. Not for fear. For attention. They want you to listen. To sit quietly. To give yourself over to whatever script they've been reciting since before fire, before language, before belief. The kind of story that shapes the land itself. The kind that uses you like punctuation. We stayed sitting. No one looked up. I don't remember who started crying first. Could have been Dave. Could have been me. All I remember is the sound, not a sob, but the kind of cry you let out when your body finally accepts it's too late for running, because that's what it felt like time had narrowed. Like if we stood, we'd be standing into something's mouth, and the trees. The trees were no longer trees. They were watching. The bark had turned slick. Not wet, but reflective, as if each trunk had been lacquered in shadow. And deeper in the forest, shapes began to emerge. Not stepping forward, just revealing themselves by not hiding anymore. Not animals, not people. Figures, outlined in where the stars should have been. One of them moved. Only a little, that was enough, because the fourth voice spoke then. It was all of them speaking together. The clearing vibrated, not from sound, from agreement. Now that you've heard us, what will you give? No one answered, not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't know what the right answer was. This wasn't a riddle. This wasn't a trap. This was a transaction. We were part of the ritual now, uninvited, maybe, but present. Jonah reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet, set it down by the fire bit like a child offering a toy to the dark. Dave took off his wedding ring. Marissa whispered something I couldn't hear and placed a torn photo face down in the ash. I didn't move. I didn't have anything. Nothing in my pockets. No charm. No keepsake. No guilt sharp enough to bleed into offering. I did the only thing I could. I opened my mouth and told a story about the first time I saw something I couldn't explain. The hallway shadow that watched me for 3 years as a kid. The one I never told anyone about. The one I thought was just fear in the shape of nothing. I told it aloud, and when I did, the voices listened, and when I finished, they answered. One word. Soft. Enough. The air rushed back into the clearing like an inhale. The coals flared. The fire returned, sudden and hot and too bright. The shapes vanished. The trees went still. We could breathe again, but none of us moved, because something had changed. Something we couldn't take back. We had heard the forest, and worse, it had heard us. They told you ghosts are invisible, that they flicker like candlelight in your peripheral vision, that they live in cold spots and creaking boards and dreams you forget too fast. But they lied. Ghosts are not shy things. They are patient, precise, present. You don't need to be born with some gift or stare into mirrors at midnight. If you want to see ghosts, really see them, all you have to do is stop pretending they're not already standing right beside you. You must untrain your eyes first. That's where it begins. Because we're taught, from birth, not to see what doesn't belong. We filter it. Shadows out of place? Just your imagination. Voices under the floor? The house settling? The reflection that lingers longer than your face? A trick of the glass. But the truth is, these things only seem invisible because we've decided to live like we're blind. I was like that once. Eyes wide shut. I had my rules. My science. My bulletproof logic. That is, until I met the boy with the glass teeth. The one who waited under my bed, not in nightmares, but in real time. He didn't move. Didn't blink. But every morning, dust in my room would trace little footprints from the far wall to the edge of the bed frame. He never spoke. But he never left. You want to see ghosts? Start there. Start with what returns to you again and again, even when it shouldn't, even when you tell yourself it didn't. The first step is noticing. The second is not running. They come first as silence, not absence silence. There's a difference. Absence is what you feel when you're alone, but silence? That's what you feel when something is deciding whether or not to speak. And when you feel that kind of silence wrap around you, cling to your teeth and your wrists and the backs of your knees. Don't break it. Listen, because ghosts don't speak like we do. Not always. They speak through patterns. Things repeating. Objects that move and return to the same place. Numbers on clocks. Birds hitting the same window at the same time every evening. They don't scream for attention. They whisper. And only those willing to unlearn the noise of the world will hear it. There was a woman once, lived alone in an apartment that used to be a hotel. Her name was Violet. She believed in ghosts, but not in seeing them. Said they were more like flavors in the air. A taste. A texture. She told me her radiator clicked in Morse code. Every night. Same pattern. Same time. She started translating it. Letter by letter. It spelled her name. And then it spelled stay. And then it stopped. No more clicking. No more heat. She never left that apartment again. And every tenant after said it was too cold to stay more than a night. Ghosts choose their audience carefully. Don't go looking for cemeteries. That's where people expect ghosts to be. The real ones? They prefer doorways, thresholds, transitions, bathrooms, staircases, hallways too narrow for comfort, places where things change. Because that's what they are now, change things. Shadows wearing the memory of light. There's an old farmhouse in Kentucky. It has 3 front doors. One is sealed. No hinges. Just a door frame bolted into solid brick. But if you stand in front of it at 3:33 a.m. and press your hand to the center panel, your palm comes back wet. Always wet. No one lives there now. But sometimes, the lights still flicker on, not all at once, just one at a time, like someone's walking room to room, making sure you see them see you. People call these places haunted, but maybe they're not haunted. Maybe they're guarded. Maybe ghosts aren't trapped. Maybe we are. Trapped in flesh, trapped in time, trapped in the belief that seeing is knowing, and knowing is safe. It isn't to see ghosts. You must stop using your eyes as shields. You must start looking without expecting to understand. Let the image break first. Let it bend. Let it flicker. Ghosts don't need you to see them in detail. They need you to recognize them. There was a boy named Eli. He disappeared from a campsite in Montana. They found his shoes beside the fire pit, perfectly aligned. But no tracks, no blood, no calls. His father returned to the site every weekend, waited with a camera, never caught a thing, until he looked back at the first photo he ever took there, the one before Eli vanished, zoomed in on the fire. In the flame, not in the light, but in the shape of the flame, was Eli's face, mouth open, not screaming, breathing. Ghosts don't appear to be mourned. They appear to be remembered, and memory is the clearest lens of all. You think you've never seen one. You have there in your childhood drawings, the extra figure in the corner you didn't mean to. Include there in your dreams, the face you've never seen in life but swear you knew. They're the reason the dog won't go into the guest room anymore. They are not just the dead. They are the parts of the living we forget how to hold. Moments frozen so hard they crack time itself. Sometimes a ghost is just a version of you that didn't survive what happened. And sometimes, it's the version that did. Some faces belong to places, not people. You don't remember meeting them. You just realize, too late, that they've always been there, tucked into the edge of your memories like a shadow hiding in the fold of an old photograph. That's how it was with him. He wasn't part of our group, but he sat by the fire every night. And no one noticed until it was far, far too late. There were 6 of us. Longtime friends from college, scattered by years, pulled back together by grief. Drew had died 6 months before overdose, they said. But none of us really believed that. He didn't do that stuff. Not seriously. And not alone. So when Kelsey suggested we take one last trip to the old campground in Bear Ridge, it felt right. Full circle. A place Drew had loved. Where we could tell the stories one more time, drink, laugh, and leave whatever was left of our confusion in the ashes. The drive up was uneventful. That was the last time things felt normal. I remember the trees lining the road too straight, too symmetrical, like they'd agreed to hold back the wind until we passed. The lake, usually murky and brown, had turned perfectly still black glass under a sky that refused to hold stars. But we told ourselves it was just the weather. Just a weird season. The first night around the fire, we all took our same spots. Katie curled up by the logs. Ben cracked beers. Jonah passed around a bottle of something stronger. I sat across from the pit, staring into the flames, feeling a hole open somewhere deep inside my chest that I hadn't known was still there. And then, he was just there, sitting between Kelsey and Ben. Dark hoodie, faded jeans, a shadow for a face. He wasn't smiling, wasn't moving, just watching. Quiet. No one said anything. Not that night, not the next. Because when you see someone in a place they should belong, you don't ask questions, not until your mind catches up to the timeline. And our minds were slow. Grief does that. Grief rewrites logic. Turns strangers into silhouettes of lost friends. It wasn't until the third night that I realized none of us knew his name. And by then, we'd already started dreaming of him. They weren't normal dreams. They were shared. I'd wake up gasping, hearing the echo of a voice that hadn't been in my own head. The others looked pale in the mornings, silent with the kind of stillness that meant they were hiding something behind their eyes. On the fourth day, Jonah finally said it out loud. Do any of you know who that guy is? We froze. No one answered. Not because we were in denial, but because we'd known. Somewhere deep down, we'd always known. We just hadn't wanted to disturb whatever fragile agreement had kept him on his side of the fire. Katie whispered, I thought he was your friend. Ben shook his head. I thought he was yours. Kelsey stood up, shaky, and turned to the edge of the woods. He wasn't there, but his chair was, and it was wet. Not rain dash wet. Dripping. As if something had just stepped out of the lake and sat down to dry. That night, we didn't light a fire. We sat in the dark, shoulder to shoulder, huddled under blankets and barely breathing. No one wanted to speak, not even to admit we'd seen him again, standing just at the tree line, his head tilted slightly, watching with a patience that felt inhuman. He wasn't trying to scare us. He was waiting. The next morning, there were 7 sets of footprints leading away from the campsite. Only 6 of us had walked back to the tents. You might be wondering why we didn't leave, why we didn't pack up and drive back to town. But there's something you don't understand. Places like this, they close around you. They don't lock the doors. They erase them. Our phones had died. The map app had vanished from the screen. The compass on Jonah's hiking watch spun slowly all day. Even the lake wasn't on the GPS anymore. The road we drove in on it turned to dirt, then to roots, then to nothing. That's when Kelsey broke. She screamed at the trees, at the sky, at the lake. Said she didn't care who he was. She wanted out. The air shifted, and then we heard him speak, from just behind her, not loud, not angry, just cold. You've already left. She collapsed, not unconscious, just empty. We carried her back to her tent, but she never looked up again. Not once. Not even when we shook her. Not even when she started smiling in her sleep. We sat around the fire again that night. We didn't want to. We had to. The circle felt wrong without him. He didn't sit this time. He stood across the flames. And we saw his face for the first time. It wasn't Drew's, but it wore Drew, like a costume made of fog and old skin. And beneath it, something else. Eyes like broken moons. A mouth too still, too knowing. Jonah whispered, What do you want? And the figure tilted its head again. I want what you brought. We didn't understand. But Ben did. He stood up, walked to the figure, took something from his pocket. It was Drew's lighter, the one he borrowed 6 months ago, the last thing any of us had seen in his hand before the police found him gone. Ben held it out, shaking. The figure stepped forward, but the fire flared, all at once. Tall, hungry, consuming. And when it died back down, both of them were gone. Ben and the stranger, And in the silence that followed, the seventh chair burned.